Hi, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancer, and welcome to part 2 of the Inventory Manager, where we've made some updates and we're going to be going deep into the code to showing you exactly how we created this amazing Inventory Manager with both purchase and sales transaction and adding inventory with a few clicks. So stay tuned, it's going to be a great training. Alrighty, welcome back to part 2. If you have not seen part 1, I do recommend you view that and also download the workbook, although they're extremely similar, both workbooks. So I'll make sure to include a link to that part 1 video in the description below. So if you haven't seen that yet, you will want to see it, as it's important, because we're going to take right off here from where we left part 1, which is getting into the code. So let's go ahead and get into the developer and Visual Basic and get started. First thing I want to do is I want to write some worksheet change. So we can go and click on worksheet and then change. And then there's some macros it's important to know the product row, so we're going to have to dimension that as long. And then also I want to write some notes on transaction change, but not on transaction load. So for example, if I make a change to a transaction, I want that data to save below in the table, but not on transaction load or new transaction. So the idea is this: if I make a change up here to a customer or transaction date or product or sales price or sales quantity, I want that information to save in the table below. I want it to save here in the table. But if it's a new transaction, we don't know the row yet, so I don't want it to save. And of course, if the transaction's loading, in other words, if these details are being put in these fields, we don't want anything to happen. I don't want it to save back to the table, right? So not on transaction load, not on. So that means transaction load, this must be false. Let's go ahead and color. These are for products. Let's color them differently a little bit so we can see the difference. Okay, so only if new transaction is false and transaction load is false, only then do I want to save the data in the table below. Only if these two are false. So that's only when I make a change to a customer, I want it to change down here. So that's what I want to happen. Let's go ahead and set those right up currently. Into the VBA, we can start writing this code. So we can say here, if not intersect, and what is it? Target, range, and what's the range? Well, it's going to be E5 through H7, all of those that cover that, or even E13 through K13. So those are the ones that we want, E13 through K13, and those are all the product fields. And then we can say is nothing, and range B4 is false, so we got to make sure B4 is false as well, and B3 is false. So new transaction, transaction loading, both of those must be false, so we need to write those in. And range B3 dot value equals false. So both of those conditions must be true in order to handle that, in order to set that up. So let's go ahead and update that. Then what are we going to do? In that case, what we want to do is we want to say also we want to make sure that B2 is not empty. That's very important. We got to have a row. We have to know what row to save it, right? I have to know B2, we have to save it to a row, so B2 cannot be empty. We have to make sure that we can check that. If range B2 dot value does not equal empty, then cells, and then we say range of B2. B2 is the row, so the row, cells, the row, dot value, this is the row. Next we have the column. So if it's the cells, B2 value. And then what is the column? The column is cells, target, row, comma, target, column plus 10. And I'll show you why it's 10 in a second. Target column plus 10. So I need to know that is going to tell us our column. We're looking for our column. Plus 10 dot value equals the target value. And let's show you why that is. This is column 5. This is column 15. So we know it's different. So this is equals column. So that's column 15, right? If this is column 5, we need to add 10. So that means we're looking for this 5. I'm looking for this 5. This I know, column 5, that means the customer goes in column 5, the product goes in column 7. Right? Customer or vendor, column 5, product, column 7. So we know what column to put it in. We just need to know, we know the target row is the same, so that is how we do data mapping, and that's how we know where it goes. So that line of code will place it automatically in there. So that's set up. So now if we make a change, if those are false, and we set the customer to 21, and we have it 21, so we can say David, right? And it automatically changes to David right here. So you can see how that works. It automatically went down. Let's continue with our code. Also, we want to say if not intersects H7. Now, what is H7? Let's take a look at that. Let's remove that first. Okay. Now we're going to say if H7, let's take a look at H7 here. If it's a sales price, I also need to add that to the product. I need to add that to the product. So if there's a change here to the price, I also want to say change it to the product price here. So we need to make that here, purchase sales price right here in this column. So that can be it. We can format that to a $sign so it's a little bit clearer. Okay, good. So we want to format it. We want to put it here as well. So we can do that. So if there's a change to H7, we need to know to do that. Let's program that in right now. We can say on change of product price. Okay, we can say if not intersect target range H7 is nothing, and range E7 does not, it can't be empty, of course. Range, we have to make sure it's not empty, so we can change that. And range B6 dot value does not equal empty. What is B6? B6 is the row of our product, right? We need to know our B6 is going to be our product row, so it cannot be empty. Then sheet 2 dot range E, that's the column where our price is, E and range B6 value. B6 value is going to tell us what row. B6 dot value, that's going to tell us what row. So that's important. We need to know that. Dot value. Okay, so that's going to give us our equals target dot value, and that's going to update the product price. That will update the product price there. So we have that. Now let's get back in and do that product row so we know what product row is. So we can know, we put in the formula for that. Let's go do that now. Now we know our products, we've named the range, so we know our products and we know they start on row 4, right? So the first one's going to be on row 4. Into the transaction, we can wrap this in an if error. If there's an issue, we'll make it blank. Equals if error, and then we're going to put in match formula. We're going to look up our product number here, and we're going to comma, and then look up array product number here as 0. We want an exact match. Plus 3, we want to add on to that because our starts in row 4, comma, double quotes in case there's an error. Okay, we're good there. Now we've set that up. Double add in those parentheses there. Okay, reset that. All right, so we're good there. Now we've got our product row here. So if we were to add in a product number, let's go ahead and put in that product number here as a data validation. So data validation, and add in that. And we're going to create a list, and we're going to say equals product number. I believe that was what it was. Okay, one more thing on that. On the data validation, I want to be able to enter new as well. So we need to clear any errors that we need to non-stop on errors. So error alert, no error alerts, because I want users to enter new from there as well. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So now when we select the first row, it'll show row 4, and that's what we want. Now we know where to save it. When there's a product change, we know where to save it. Let's go ahead and put in those mapped named ranges now. The product name is going to be in column 5. The type is going to be in column 7. The standard purchase quantity, that is going to be in 9. And the description is going to be in 10. So that is it. So that is how let's take a look at those columns here. Equals column. All right. Just temporarily so we can see all those columns and how they fit in. Product link is 11, description is in 10, sales price is in 6, and product name is in 5, sales price is in F. Oh, let's go ahead and update that code there. That should be F, not E. This should be F. That is where our price is, column F. And that's what we want to update. All right, so we have that in F. The type, product name, we've got all of that there. All right, let's go ahead and center that so it looks a little bit better. There we go. Next, we want to set. Now we have our map ranges. So this way, when we make a change to a product type, it changes in the product database. When we change the quantity or the description, it's going to change here. That's where I want to change. That's why we're mapping it. So the changes are automatic. We'll go ahead and set up the code to do that back into our code. Let's update that and make those updates accordingly. So we've got the update, the cost is already set up here. Now we can say on the product change, load product. Let's do that. Let's add in that. Okay, we can bring this down here. We can wrap this in so that both of those changes are done on all of this, just in case. And next up, we're ready to go on product change, load the product. So what I'm trying to do here is, if I change a product, if I select a new product, I want its sales price, I want the product name, and I want the product type. I want that all to appear, and I want it to pull from the database, and I also want the picture link. I want a picture to show up here as well. So let's do that. Back into the VBA code, and we'll start writing that code. If not intersect target range E7, that's the product number, E7 is nothing, and range E7 does not equal empty, right? E7 dot value does not equal empty, then then what? Then we're going to do a few things. And first we're going to say if range B6, we need to have a row number. That's very important. B6 dot value does not equal empty. That's the product row. Then, okay, on change of existing product, but not on product load. Existing product, but not on product load. Same thing for transactions. And here we go. Here's what we can do. Update product in the table and row. If range B2 dot value does not equal empty, does not equal, and I'll go over this with you again, so not to worry. Empty and range B4 equals false. Then range G and range B2, that's the transaction row, B2 dot value equals range E7, that's the price, E7 dot value. That's going to be the save product number, save the product number in the transaction. Nice. Okay. Dot value. Okay. Now we're done with that. All right, very good. Now we've got that done. Let's go ahead. I'm going to copy and paste some code on a prior version so that we can do this a little bit faster. And we'll go ahead and copy that, and I'll paste it right in here. So I've got some code here, and I'll explain everything to you so that you can at least see what we're doing here and how it's going about it, because I want to move this on because I know it's going to get long for you. So we're right here, and we're going to run a macro called product load, and we're going to add those macros. Now I'm going to add all the macros for you, and then you can follow along. So we're going to insert the module, and we're going to call this module product macros. Give it a name here, product macros. And then we're going to add another module. We're going to call that transaction modules and macros so that you can see the difference, because we have macros for both transactions and product. Okay, so now that we've got both of those written, I'm going to copy and paste from a prior version so you can see how we're going to do that. So product macros, I'm going to paste in some macros that I've had from a previous version, and then we'll go over. Basically, we have product load, we have attachment thumbnails, and display thumbnails. And we've gone over a little bit of that in prior versions, but we're going to go ahead and go over that again. We only need one of these. And also with the transaction macros, we're going to add some as well onto that. I'll copy and paste those and then go over them with you. That's just in order to save time. Now I've got them. And we have for our transaction macros, we have transaction load, we have transaction save, we have transaction new, transaction delete, and cancel new. So we've got those up, and let's assign those macros to the buttons that we have created here in there. So we have save transaction. Let's go ahead and click on that button, and then also the icon, right click, and assign the macro to the ones we just copied, and we'll go over that. Transaction save, that's the one we just copied. We'll go over those macros. And then cancel new, we're going to assign that as well. Assign macro. And then transaction cancel new. Good, so we've got those, and let's bring that down a little bit, and then assign macro to our new transaction and delete transaction as well. So clicking on the individual icon and the individual button, right clicking as well, assigning macro to the new transaction, which will be transaction new here. And then we have delete transaction. Going to assign macros to that for as well, transaction delete, which can be right here. Okay, now we've got all those transactions. We also want to add a picture, so let's assign a macro to that. We can, in this case, this is not part of a group, we can assign a macro directly to that. So we can assign product attached thumb here. And then, all right, good. So now we have that. And with the hide and show, we also want to create macros with that. Let's go ahead and add those in. Under the sheet macros, here we have already one, which is the move button. And we're going to update that with all of the macros that we have. And the move button, we've created some more add, and we've also details show and details hide. So now we have those. I've just pasted those macros in, and then I can go over them with you. If I just type them out, it's going to take a little bit longer. So for the hide details, let's assign that macro, assign macro, and then we will hide product details, hide that macro, and then of course the show details, right click. So now we've got our macros assigned, and we can move a little bit quicker now on that. And the show, product details show. Okay, so let's take a look at those. Bring that up again. I'll format those so we can align the top so that they're all set, and then align the middle as well. Align the left, perhaps. Okay, so those buttons are. All right, so now we have hide detail button. We click that, it's going to hide it and show the details button. Let's go ahead and go over those two macros. The product details show button, all we're going to be doing is 9 through 12. We're going to hide those rows, and then we're going to hide the view details button and show the hide details button. So those buttons are going to be opposite, and then the hide is just the same. We're going to hide 9 through 12. Here we're showing 9 through 12. rows 9 through 12 we're hiding, hidden equals true. And then again, the view details button, we are going to show that visible true, and the hide visible false. So that gives us that effect to hide. So when we can hide the details and show the details just by doing that for these two rows. Okay, great. Now we're set up with that. Now we've saved the transaction. Let's go over what else we've changed in here. Now remember, we have the move buttons, but what I also want to do is I want to change the validation here. Take a look at this. Customer or vendor. So now we have the difference. So for customers, we've changed the data validation. This is vendors, but if we change this to sales, this becomes customers. And how did we do that? Let's take a look at that. Under sheet macros, we can see that we're going to delete on move button, we're going to delete the validation on E5. We're deleting it first. Then what we're going to say is if B1 equals purchase, then move the button to the left. Then B1 equals sales, and then we're going to set the validation and set the formula to the customers. However, if shapes move button equals else, if move button, move it to 30 like left, B1 equals purchases, and the validation equals vendors. So that's how we set it up. When we move the button, it changes the validation either with vendors or to customers. So that's how we do that through VBA. So that is how we get automatically that validation to change, and that's really important so that we can set that up. So when we change it, automatically it changes here. We can change it, put in a transaction date, and we'll go ahead and format that for a short date and then move it to the left. Short date. All right, good. I like it there. All right, so now we're set. Now let's get these buttons updated. All right, clicking Save Transaction, you want to save it. All right, so we selected it. Now we have our new transaction. We have our delete transaction. We have our add picture. And it looks like our add picture. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so we've got our, that comes from our data. So we want to add a picture and click on a picture and click OK. And that's going to add a picture. And I'll show you how we did that. I mean, it looks like it's a little bit low. We can actually increase this a little bit. So it's, there we go. That should be fine. We've increased it. And then we can move this up a little bit. All right, good. So now we've arranged it. Now we've got our hide details and show details. We've got our quantity. Let's go ahead and update the formula for our quantity on hand. So we're going to start out, we want to wrap this in an if error, and just in case there's an error, we don't want anything to happen. We don't want it to show an error. So if error, and then we're going to use some ifs because it's going to be multiple ifs. In the sum ifs, we're going to start out with the transaction quantity. Transaction, because that's what we're going to be summing. That's their sum range. And our first criteria is going to be transaction product number. Transaction, the product number, right? And what is that criteria? Well, it must be this number here. So we're gonna do sum all the transaction and all the product quantities. And we also want to know all the purchases. So the transaction, and I want to know only on purchases for right now. So the transaction type for our next one, transaction type must be purchases because it's going to be purchase minus sales. So purchase, right? So that's what I want to know. I want to know all of that, right? But I just don't want it. I don't want that. It needs to subtract purchases minus the sales. Purchases minus the sales. So minus sum ifs, and again, here we go. The sum range is also going to be transaction quantity. Then our criteria also is going to be transaction product number. I want to know that as well. And the product number should be this as well, E7. And this time the transaction type is going to be sales, transaction type sales. So the criteria is sales here. There we go. Now, if it's an error, double click. Okay, so that is our quantity there. In this case, it's minus 22. We should probably increase the column a little bit so we can, there we go. Okay, right click there. Sure, it's a little bit close, not perfect, but you get the point. Okay, so now we know if we choose another item, we can see minus 10 or minus 20. In this case, our numbers are not too specifically correct, but that's okay. We are not concerned about that. Let's format these dates here under a short date. All right, there we go. So we can format these prices as well for currency. Good. The quantity. Now we're getting set up. Now it's looking more and more like a software. Now we've got quantity on hand at 10, and the total is, we can change the total. We can add in that formula as well, and that's basically going to be equals sales quantity times the price, times the sales price. Okay. All right, let's also give this total format that a background, because we're not going to be entering. It's going to be a straight formula, so there's no user entry into this total. So that's going to work, and we'll go ahead and update that. Perfect. All right, so now we're set up. We can also format the total column here as a number there, dollar amount. Okay, we want to format these as well, all the same. Accounting, okay, good. All right, now they're all the same. Now we've got the quantity. We can even center quantities here. Okay, we can put that in. All right, centered quantities. Okay, let's go ahead, and now when we select a particular item, we've got our totals that come up. We've got, it looks like we got to add conditional formatting to here. We need to add this cell to the conditional formatting. Notice how it's not. So we can go ahead, and that's pretty easy. Just click on any cell that contains the conditional formatting, manage the rules, go ahead into that specific, click on here, and then we'll go ahead and add it to that by clicking on the cell itself, and then make sure we enter a comma, and then apply that. And now we've got that last cell that's covered into our conditional formatting. Now we've got it set. Now we've got our conditional formatting set on the background. We've got it set on the fonts. And now we're ready to go into more detail on the particular VBA that we've had, because we've got add picture. Let's go ahead and show you what we did there and how that was. I just copied and pasted that from another application just to save you from typing, but save me from typing and you from watching me type. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and go through each one of them. It's on the sheet macro, or the product macros here into that module. And we have what's called product attached thumb. Now when we click that button, it's going to look for a particular file. It's going to open up the file dialog, right? Application file dialog. This is going to open it up. It's going to set that picture file. And then with that picture file, it's going to give it a title of set a product picture. It's going to use these filters, all filters, type of pictures, JPEGs, JPGs, GIF, PNG, GIF. So it's going to give those all that type. And then in case the user doesn't make any selection, it's going to go to no selection. Just in case the user cancels out of it, we don't want to skip this. And assuming they don't and they do select it, that sheet 1 014 is going to equal that file name. That's the full file name in 014. So that's going to transfer there. And then and we're also, what we want to do is we want to say, hey, if this is an existing item. Let's say we already have this item. Okay, let's pull up an item that doesn't, okay, this one, BA001, there's no picture associated with this. When we go into products and we look at BA001, you see there's no picture link, right? What I want to do is I want to say, if it's an existing product, in this case it is, so let's make sure that's set to false, and we'll update that. If it's an existing product, what I want to do is I want to take this product row and I want to add that file name, that long file name, once it's put here in 014, but I also want to add it to K and the product row. The product row is 6. K is the column. I want to put it right there. So we know the column because it's always in K. We know the product row because it's here using our match. We know it's 6, so we know where to put it now. So in this particular VBA code, what we're saying is if B7 equals false, that means it's not, as long as it's an existing product, B7 is false, then sheet 2, K, and B6 value, the row, the product row, equals 014, which is the file name. So when we go ahead and we add a file name, it's going to add, so if we add a picture to that and we add a specific t-shirt, let's say we add this small red one or this big red one, and we add that, it's going to add it both. It can add that long file name here and also here. K6. You see it's just been added. So that line of code adds it. So that's time the next time we pull up that picture, the next time we pull up that product, the picture will display. So for example, when we create a new transaction, or if we even just check on another transaction and we pull up that old product, BA001, it's going to come up again. So you see, automatically, because it's been saved, it now comes up. So saving it not only to the current file, but to the actual product information database here is very important. So we want that, so that'll come up. So that is why. Now let's focus on, so now we know how to get the picture file name here, and now we know how to get it in the products. But how do we get that picture displaying right here and in that manner? Let's go over the macro that's going to do that. Pulling it up, back up, we have a macro called display product display thumb. And you see right after we insert a picture, we're going to run this macro, product display thumb. Now let's go through that macro. It's a very simple macro. We're going to dimension picture path as the string. That's the full path. And then what we want to do is I want to delete any picture that might be there. The pictures that get created always have the same name, thumb pic, always going to have that same name. So that way, when we always know we delete it, we don't get that way we don't get 100 pictures every time we add one. We only have one displaying at any given time. That one always has the same name, so we can easily delete it. This on error, resume next, and on error, go to 0. We use these two lines, we wrap them in error so that in case there is no thumb picture, in case there is no picture, it doesn't throw up an error. Next, we set the picture path to 014. Of course, if picture path equals empty, we exit sub. If there is no file path, we can't insert a picture, so we need to exit out. And then next, with pictures, and of course, it's already sheet 1, right? It's already sheet 1, so it's dot pictures, which means sheet 1, dot pictures, dot insert, picture path. This is the full name. This inserts the picture. It doesn't tell us where. It doesn't tell us what size. It just inserts it. The next few lines is going to tell us what size and what name. First, we're going to lock aspect ratio. This makes sure that setting the aspect ratio first, locking that true to true, is important. We're going to set the picture name, because once we have a picture, we can then work with it, and we need that name in the next set here, because we're going to say with the thumb picture. Then I want to place it. I want to place it in K3 on the left and on the top. But I also want to move it to the left. Remember, minus 60 is to the left, plus 60 is to the right. So we're going to move it to the left of K3, the left of K3, 60 pixels. We're going to move it down below top 20 pixels down. Negative would be up. So that is how we get that place. That's how we size it, and that's how we place it. Now let's say it's going a little bit too far down. We need to make it go up because it is kind of close. So let's set that increment top to maybe, let's just say 17, so it's not so far close to that. Maybe we don't want to set it that far. So now when we just select it and we select it, there we go. Now it's a little bit higher. You see, even when we load the product, it's going to load that picture always. That macro is going to run always. When we load or when we add a picture, that macro, and that macro again is product display thumb. So that's it. All we're doing basically is we're inserting a shape, we're deleting any shape, we are setting the aspect ratio, setting the height, and naming it. Then we're positioning it at K3. We're moving it a little bit over to the left and a little bit down. That is it. That is all we're doing to display the thumb. So it's very powerful, especially when you have lots of products. All right, moving along, I'd like to go back into the transactions on sheet macro and focus on the selection change. And this is relatively simple. I want two things to happen. I want to load the transaction, and I want to put the target row in B2 when a user makes a selection change to any cell between D18 and K999, and when D and the target row does not equal empty. And so what does that mean? When a user selects any cell within that D18 all the way to K and the 999, I want two things to happen. I want this information to load. I want that sales transaction to load. and I want the row that they've selected to appear in B2. We use B2 not only to use conditional formatting to highlight the selected row, but to use the row to when we make a change to a specific field, we know what row to update that information to. So that's very important. So we do those two things, and also we have other macros which are change macros. So that pretty much covers the selection change. That's the only selection change. Now we went over the top part of this, which was the change macro. When we make a change to any cell within the transaction, we know that we are going to update the table below. So when we make a change to any of these fields, we're going to change the table below. We went over that based on the mapped column here. Based on that, these columns are mapped to products. These are mapped to transactions. Okay, we can color those differently if it makes a little bit more sense, or we can put borders around it. So these are specifically for products, product mapping, because products map are in the products sheet. So we can put a little border around that so we know that those are products. Okay, next up, what I'd like to do is continue on with that, and now we have product change. On product change or load product, product change, load product. If the user makes a change to E7, E7 is the product ID here, E7. What do I want to happen? Well, I want a few things to happen. I want the new product information to load, and if there's a picture, I want to load that, but I also want it to update right here, the product number. I want it to update. So I want that product number to update in the transaction because this is already a current transaction. So those two things need to happen. So if E7 there's a change and E7 doesn't equal empty, we want to make sure that they've entered a value. And then I want to do some things. One, I want to check B6 to make sure that's not empty. What is B6? B6 is the product row. We want to make sure that there's a row, a product that was found, right? We have to find the product. For example, in this it's 17, right? Test name 3, 17. We need to make sure if we're going to pull the information from this table and put it in these fields, we need the row of the table. So this row is critical. We need to make sure that is there. So next up, what we need to do is then, once we know it's empty, we can say if B2 does not equal empty, B2 is the current row, and B4 equals false, right? B4 and B2, let's look at those. B2, we have to have a transaction row. We have to make sure that the transaction is not loading, right? If those are the case, in that case, take this product name, take this product number and put it right here. Put it in G and the row. So that's what we're going to do with that line of code right here. Then G, range, that's the product row, G in the product equals E7. E7. You could also say target value. We could do that as well because that is the target value. But E7 is the same. So we're going to save that in the table. And next up, we're going to run a macro called product load. Product load is going to load all of the details into our product table. It's going to load the sales price. It's going to load the product name. It's going to load the product type. It's going to load the standard purchase quantity and the product description. It's going to load all of that right there. So let's go into the product load and take a look at that macro. Under the product macros, we have something called product load. We're going to primarily focus with sheet 1. So we're going to say if B6 is empty, then exit the sub. Of course, we need to have a product row, so B6 is where. The product row will then be in B6. So we've got that set up. So now it's just a matter of setting the information. Product load to true. We're loading the product, so we need to set it to true. And of course, we'll set it to false once we're done. The product load value, true or false, is stored in B8. Next, we're going to run from product column 5 to 11. Why are we doing 5 to 11? Because that is where we have our map data 5 to 11. We already have the product number, so we don't need to start at 4. 5 to 11, right? We put all that. We've mapped the data. Product name goes in E9. Sales pricing goes in H7. Type goes in H9. H, that is the quantity on hand. That is a calculated field. We already have it calculated there, so we don't need that because it's calculated. Of course, I is the purchase quantity, and so on. It goes all the way. So we're going to map 5 to, why is this 5? Let's look at it. So column 5, column 5. Right, column 5 to 11. 5 to 11. Okay, so that's how we get that. Now let's continue in on that and look how we do that. All right, 5 to 11. If the product column does not equal 8, what is 8? 8 is the calculated field. We don't have a map data because it's already a formula, right? We don't need to add the quantity on hand. That's already a formula right here, right there. We don't want to mess with that. I probably should put this in a different location and move the picture over a little bit, but it's okay for now. You can move it to anywhere you like. I've just found to put it there. The quantity on hand is located there, so it's a formula. We don't need to touch that. So that would be in 8, right? So we can skip 8 and continue on. So as long as it does not equal 8, then the range of what? We should put dot range. That should be dot range because we're focused on sheet 1, right? So it should be dot range. Sheet 1, and what is that range? It's located in row 1, sheet 2, product column, right? Row 1, that's where this is our range. Right here, that information, row 1, product column, that is this right here. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. So it's going to tell us where to put that. So that is why we need that information here. So that's going to tell us, so it's going to say the range of H2 or H7 or whatever equals sheet 2, the cells, the product row, and the product column. That is how we're going to get all of our product data into and we're going to loop that all the way from 5 to 11, but make sure to exclude. If it's 8, we're not going to do it. Next up, we need the shapes view detail button visible equals false. We want to make sure that if the shape view detail button is false, we don't need this. Actually, let's get rid of that. I had some shapes up there, but it's not necessary. I had add product, new product, but we don't need that. I've eliminated that and given you the ability to add products very easily just by typing them in, so it's even better. All right, so that's easy. Product display thumb, we went over that. This displays the picture if there is a picture. And B8's false. So that is all we need to do to load the product information in there. So it's very, very simple. And that is how. So that's now we've gone through here. Now else we're going to cover this next. I'd also like to be able to add products very easily just by typing them in. If they don't exist, I want to be given the option to add those products. So we can do that. Here we go into the application. If I want to type in a product number, like if let's say something doesn't exist, like BA456, if that product doesn't exist, I want to be given an option. This product does not currently exist. Would you like to add it now? Yes, and then done. It's that simple. So then we can give it a sales price, a product name, test name, and a type. And so I wanted to show you how we do that just by entering a name. So let's go ahead back into the code to show you how that's done. And here in the product list, if you look, the last one, test name, it's right here. So that's the one we just entered. So let's see how we do that. And remember this, the product row is B6, and that's calculated based on that. So if it's not found, if we enter something that's not found, that product row is going to be empty because it's going to be error. So remember that product row is going to be empty. So we're going to use that empty. So we're saying here in this, if B6 value does not equal empty, then do this. However, if it's empty, else, then do this. If message box, this product does not currently exist, would you like to add it now? VB yes or no, product not found as the title. If VB yes, then do all of this. Do all of this. If they say no, just clear the contents of the target. So that means clear it. So it's so simple. Let me just show you how to do that. We know it's not found. We know it's not found. So all we need to do is determine the first available row in sheet 2. The first available row, of course, is the last row in column D on sheet 2. That's our products. Plus 1. That's our first available row. Now we know the product row. Now all we need to do is sheet 2 and the product row, all we need to do is add that target value, and of course we need to add the formula that counts it. Now that formula is the same one we just entered. Sum ifs transaction quantity, transaction product name, and I'll go over this formula a little bit later on with you so you can look at it, but it's the formula that we do. And so let's go ahead and look at that formula. Into the products we go, and now we can see into the products we have this formula that was just entered automatically. Sum if, and what are we going to be summing? The transaction quantity. And what is the first criteria range? Transaction product number, and that's D24 right here. It's the product number. And what is the transaction type? Purchase. So that's the purchase. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be summing all of the transactions where the product number in the transactions are product D24 and the type is purchase, minus all of the transactions that have the product D24 and the transaction type of sales. So we're going to do subtraction. The sum minus sum of the purchases minus the sum of the sales equal the total quantity on hand. So that is the sum, and that is what's entered. This way we don't need to enter formulas for all of the fields that do not contain values. As we enter data, then the formula gets entered. So that's how it works within the code. Let's go back into the code and take a look at and continue with that. So once the formula is entered, we can then clear the contents of the remaining fields for the product. Since it's a new product, we need to clear out all of the other fields, of course, and that includes the sales price, which is H7, of course, E9, H9, E11, and of course H11 through K11, as well, of course, as the picture link if there is any in O14. So all those fields need to be cleared out that are product specific, and they're all cleared out right here in this. So then we're ready. We just have to set the new product to false because we've already saved a new product, the product number here, the formula here. So anything else, it's no longer a new product. It's now been entered, and it's also, because we have entered the target value in column D, it is now available in our list. So this new item is now available at the bottom of the list. So let's go over that one more time. Let's pick a number, ED1234. Okay. This product does not currently exist. Do you want to add it now? Yes. Okay, all of the items are cleared out. That is now available. It's so easy to add to the list, and our formula is already entered as well. So now all we need to do is enter the rest of the product names. Because it's now an existing product, we now know that it goes into row 25. That is the brand new row. So now when we add test name, it knows exactly where to put this. Product row 25, product name, test name. We know exactly where to put it right here. E and row 25. So the same with the rest of the values could all go there. So that's how it's done. That's how we add items. So it's really, really powerful. So that's easily how we get that information into the product table as quickly as possible. We can add quantities such as standard product quantities, the product test description, as well as type and the sales price very easily just by typing them in. And since we know, they automatically make it to that row. So it's very easy. And even if we want to add a picture to that, we can simply add the picture there, select an item that we would want, click OK, and then both of the picture link gets added to O14 as well as our new product, and it's always there and then becomes available for any other type of transaction. So that is how we get that information. And now let's go ahead and continue with our code. Else we have target clearance. So if the user says no, if we enter a name, and let's say we have let's say cancel the new transaction, let's enter a new transaction. If we enter a product name and the user says no, then it just goes back and it clears that, clears it. So target clear contents. That is all that is done there, so that we covered that. All right, next up on change of existing product. This is the last one. This is the change. Update the product. Change of existing. If there is a change from E9 to E11, changing anything, we want to change those products. We just went over that. That's the same thing. If there's any change from E9 all the way over any of these details here, we are then going to make those changes directly into the product here. We just went over that. So that's covered there, and all that does is it sets the product row at B6, and then it takes our target column, target row, target column plus 10. Again, we've mapped out all of our information here. So we have our product table column 5, product table column 7, etc., etc. And that's how we map those out as we've done mapping previous posts. Okay, let's go ahead and get into our last part, which is our save transaction. And we've been over this a few times, but let's go ahead and go over it. And that's how we've been over load transaction. Now we'll go over save. And save is pretty simple. First, we want to make sure that E5 contains a value. That is the transaction, the first part, that's the vendor or the customer. So we want to make sure, please select customer vendor. We want to make sure that that contains a value. We're going to set the transaction row to the first available on sheet 1 plus 1. So it's D row plus 1. Then we're going to go ahead and set our transaction columns from 4 to 11. Using our mapping that we've set up here, 4 all the way to 11, we're setting it up. And of course, if it's 10, that is a formula, so we're going to put in a formula in that case. If the transaction column does not equal 10, then we just go through each transaction row, each transaction column, 4 to 11. It's going to be the cells. Row 16 is where our mapping is. And the transaction column, what is that value? Well, that value right here is either going to be B1, E5, H5, or H7. So it's all located. Those are the ranges. So those are the ranges. So each value in the row will equal whatever the range value is here. And then of course, if it is of course column 10, we just want to put in a formula there, which is going to be equal H and the transaction row and times I in the transaction row. So that's going to enter our formula in the total row. In this case, it's going to be H27 through I27. I just pasted in data, but we can copy down the formulas for their existing as well, so we can get those. So that is how that is going to handle that. That is how we enter the formula, and so that stays consistent. So that way, if we update the value, for example, if we just update the value, we want the total to update too, and that's why we use a formula. Or if we update the amount, in this row, we want also the price to update as well. So that's important. And so that's why we take care of that. So for example, 18, 15, we can update that sales price. It was just data in there. All right, so that works very well. Moving on, let's continue down. And next up, we want to hide or show the shapes based on the type. So existing transaction, it's no longer a new transaction once we save it. So we want the existing transaction group to display and the new transaction group to be hidden. That's it for that. B3 will become false. With the transaction new, all we're going to be setting is the transaction to new in B3, clearing out all the necessary fields. It's going to set the current date H5 to the current date. That's kind of a nice. And then we're going to, of course, set the existing transaction group buttons to false while the new becomes visible. And we're going to delete any picture if it's visible. Any thumbnail picture for new, we're going to delete that. For the transaction delete, all we need to do is make sure that B2 contains a number, which is going to be the row of our database. If it's empty, we're going to exit the sub. We're going to give them an option. Are you sure you want to delete this transaction? Yes or no, and then title of delete transaction. VB no. If it's no, we're just going to exit the sub. Otherwise, we will continue on. The transaction row is going to be in B2. And then we're just going to use transaction row and a colon, quotation marks, and transaction row, entire row delete. So we're going to delete the row using the transaction row here, and then we're going to select D18, which is the first transaction in our table, and that just sets the default to the first transaction. Cancel new does the same thing, selects the first transaction, so that way we can get out of the new. So when we go into new transaction, we want to cancel it. All we're going to be doing is the same thing as selecting new. So when we go new transaction, canceling new performs the same option. Let's go ahead and set that. So if we go to new transaction, cancel new, it's just going to set that. Deleting the transaction will work. We can click on any specific transaction, click delete transaction. Are you sure you want to delete this? Yes. That's going to delete the transaction and it's automatically gone. And the next transaction appears in the first. that is pretty much it. I may make a few small changes to this in part two if you see any changes, but otherwise I'll go through this application. I think it's almost done. I'll double check all the fields before I release it out to you. So I hope you like this dual part inventory manager. Thank you very much for this long training, and I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks so much.